Hi everyone and welcome back to my booktube channel, Lisa in Bookland. Today I'm going to do the Canterbury Tales tag. I was very kindly tagged by Roz at Scallydandling about the books some time ago, so I'm excited to do this tag. There's so many interesting questions on it, and I'll also tag the original creator of the tag down below because it's a brilliant tag, so interesting. There are quite a lot of questions in the tag and I'd love to have answered every single one of them, but in the interest of keeping this video quite short, I actually just used a random number generator to select 10 to answer. So these are those 10. The first question that came out in the generator was the man of law upholds justice and knows the laws by heart. What is a book that you could not imagine rereading? So I read Les Misérables last year, and while I really did enjoy it and I think it was worth my time reading it, I can't imagine rereading it again in a hurry. It's probably mostly due to its length, but then again I've read like War and Peace, which is about the same length, and I probably just liked War and Peace more, so I'd probably see myself rereading War and Peace faster than I would this one. I just didn't get the same spark from Les Misérables, so I'll probably stick to the musical and maybe the BBC series, which I still haven't seen. So I do have The Hunchback of Notre Dame on my TBR, so I would like to read that at some stage as well. The next question is, The Pardoner is all about ambiguity. Tell us about your favourite queer characters. So this is an unexpectedly difficult question. I don't know whether it's right or not, but often it's not like disclosed on the blurb that there are queer characters in the book, and because we always assume that the characters are heterosexual, unfortunately I think mentioning those books here would be regarded as a spoiler. But that's kind of the way I prefer my queer romances, and all romances really is just when they're like, you know, a subplot of the book and not the main feature. So an example I suppose would be the book Loveless by Alice Oseman. I was excited when that came out to see an asexual character, but the whole book was like about that. I don't know, I just found it a bit irritating. So that's why I suppose I don't really gravitate towards books that are like marketed explicitly as queer romance. I hope I explained that okay, but the books I think I can safely mention without spoilers, because the characters aren't obvious at the start, are The Terror by Dan Simmons, which might be an unexpected one, but it's really interesting the two types of relationships that there are in that book. It is only a small aspect of it now, I have to say. Like, the main feature is it's a fictionalised account of the Franklin expedition to the Northwest Passage. Also Miss Carter's War by Shelia Hancock. I read that book a long time ago, but I still can remember the depiction of the AIDS crisis at the end. So the book really spans from like after the Second World War all the way up to the 1980s, and I just can remember the queer characters in that and how it depicted how that crisis affected them and how society treated them. So while not a very pleasant depiction of what it means to be gay, I suppose, I still really enjoyed that as a book. So I'd recommend those two. So the next question that came out is number 6. So the prioress is modest, quiet and compassionate. Recommend a book you don't hear about much on BookTube. This is a good question because it just allows you to talk about some more niche books, I suppose, that you don't get a chance to hear about very often. And I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about this book again, Mercia's Take by Daniel Wiles. So I picked this up in Cornwell when I was over there earlier this year. It's a debut novel, it's a new release, it was just released in I think February. It's about a coal miner in the 1860s who's working 2 mining jobs to try and send his son to school, and one day when he's down the mine he finds a seam of gold with his mining partner. The interactions they have about that and how it changes them. So I just love the characters in this and how they're portrayed. It just touches, like, it's such a short little book, but like I said in my February reading wrap up, it just touches on so many aspects of their life. That really was the unique point of this book, that it covered so much kind of subtly in so few pages. So I'd highly recommend this book. I haven't heard anybody else talk about it, so if you get a chance, pick it up. So the next question is, the Shipman is a wine-stealing rascal. Tell us about a side character who steals the spotlight. So look, I think I've talked about Admiral Croft and Persuasion quite enough in my February reading wrap-up. Instead I'm going to go for Dr. Alan Woodcourt from Bleak House. Dr. Woodcourt is so compassionate and loved by everyone, and he's actually my favourite character in Bleak House. He steals the spotlight for me, and like I do with my favourite books, I suppose, I have a lot of scenes and lines highlighted in Bleak House, and yeah, I think a lot of them are to do with him, so I just love Dr. Woodcourt. So the next question that came out is question 22. The cook makes the food that feeds you. Tell us about a book that feeds your soul. So I'm going to talk about Goodnight, Mr. Tom for this. So this book was a favourite of mine when I was younger, and I still reread it regularly. It's quite battered at this stage. It's about this boy called William Beach who gets evacuated from his abusive home in London during the Blitz and gets sent to live with this grumpy old man called Mr. Tom, who lives in a cottage beside a graveyard. It's about how William comes out of himself and how he helps Tom kind of integrate more into the community as well, and it's such a heartwarming book. Yeah, it definitely is food for the soul. So the next question that came out is 8. The friar is all about confession. Confess to us, have you read the Bible, Torah, Quran or other religious text all the way through? So that would be a no from me, I'm afraid. That would be such a massive undertaking. Wow. Fair play to anybody that has done it. So 1 then is the host is the character who relates the tales to the reader. He is large, loud and merry. Recommend a mammoth book over 800 pages for March of the Mammoths. That's such a great reading event as well, March of the Mammoths. I didn't get to take part this year because I was reading for the Irish Readathon, but maybe next year I'll get to combine both of them. But yeah, so I've actually just mentioned this book, but I said I'd mention it again. So that's Bleak House by Charles Dickens. It's my favourite Charles Dickens so far. I have read like some other big ones like David Copperfield and Our Mutual Friend, and although I really did like Our Mutual Friend, Bleak House continues to be my favourite. I think I've read it 3 times. I love all of the characters, especially the supporting ones. As I mentioned, Dr. Woodcourt is so great, and also Cassie. Oh my god, I love Cassie's storyline, and yeah, she's so funny. The plot is great, and I think it's really accessible Dickens as well. I don't always get on with Charles Dickens, but I find this book kind of has a really good balance between kind of the more, how would you say it, like ridiculous elements and serious elements. I'm just absolutely bowled over by the ending. I love the ending. I know not everybody loves the ending, but I think it's absolutely great. So yeah, Bleak House is well worth the page count. I probably will reread it again at some stage because yeah, I just love Bleak House. So the next number that came up was actually question 22 again, which I'd already done, so I pressed generate again, and question 5 came up, which is the miller is bold, blasphemous and overturns conventions. Who is your favourite naughty character? So my favourite naughty character has to be Richard Sharpe from the Sharpe books by Bernard Cornwell. This is one of the last ones chronologically, Sharpe's Waterloo. Sharpe is probably one of my favourite characters of all time, and to be fair, I kind of was thinking about this, and like characters in running series have like an advantage because you just get so attached to them. Like how could you not? How much, like there's over 20 books in the Sharpe series. You just see him grow so much and go through so much. Sharpe is in the British Army during the Napoleonic Wars, as he says himself. He was born in the gutter. And he still kind of retains that rough exterior throughout all the books. He's kind of truly noble at heart, and he definitely has a soft spot for like damsels in distress, but he is like so naughty. Oh, he has a different woman every book. I'd say he spends half his time fighting the French and half the time fighting his own side, usually his superior officers, and getting into trouble. He'll threaten, steal, blackmail and murder where necessary to like remove incompetent officers from his way. But he's doing it all because he believes it's the right thing. Like he strongly believes in the good of the army, I suppose, rather than his own pocket. You know, he does like to line his own pockets as well, but you know, he's faced with a lot of corruption and he just won't stand for that. In Sharpe's regiment, he's begged and bribed to leave shady activity in the army alone and just go away and shut up, like, but he just won't because it's going to cost too much to the war. So I just really enjoy Sharpe as a character, and you're kind of right inside his head for all the books, so you kind of see all him in all his neurotic glory. So he's so human, and that's why I love Sharpe even though he is so naughty. So question 24 is the Nuns Priest is witty and doesn't take himself too seriously. Recommend a book that has a funny or witty main character. So this is another character from a long running series. I had to give this to Jack Aubrey from the Aubrey-maturin series. I don't know if you'd say Jack is witty, but he definitely is funny. funny, and I think most of the time you're laughing like with him instead of at him. Like it's a running gag throughout all the books. He'll like make a joke and then he'll start laughing at himself, and then he'll like repeat it a good few times just in case anybody hasn't got it. He also kind of gets like common sayings wrong, like, you know, a bird in the hand is worth two in a bush. He butchers that so many times throughout these books. He's just generally like so affable. They're just such good humoured books in general, and I just rarely stop smiling apart from, you know, the serious sections. But yeah, a lot of the books I'll be just constantly smiling to myself when I'm on an adventure with Jack and Stephen. So the last question I'm going to answer then is question 23, which is: the yeoman serves you. Tell us about a book that served its purpose, that did what you wanted it to do. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. So I suppose, like a lot of people, I read the Thomas Cromwell series, and I didn't really know that much about Tudor history before, but I wanted to know a little bit more, and especially about the Queens, because I'd heard people talk a lot about them, and obviously it's kind of a nice way to frame Henry VIII's reign for, like, I suppose people that wouldn't be that familiar with the finer details of it like me. I thought it might be nice to kind of do that through fiction, and I know Alison Weir is a historian, so I picked up the first book in the Six Tudor Queens series, which is about Catherine of Aragon. If you are very interested in Catherine of Aragon and you're already like familiar with this period, maybe it would be one to pick up. But for me it was just way too detailed for a fiction book. It's very long. I'm sure Alison Weir is a great historian, and I actually have her non-fiction book on my TBR. I actually bought it around the same time I think I was at Hampton Court Palace when I was over in London last year, which is a great visit. But anyways, I picked that up here as a souvenir, The Six Wives of Henry VIII, and I'm still excited to read this one. So the Catherine of Aragon book definitely did teach me a lot. It did exactly what it said on the tin, but I think when it was that detailed, without kind of like the emotional depth and, you know, fast-paced plot you'd expect from a fiction book, I'd rather have consumed the content as an autobiography. So who knows, maybe I will return to the series when I have read this autobiography, and if there's like one of the queens that I'm like kind of more attached to than the others, I'd be interested to see how she would fictionalise the story of Anne of Cleves. I have heard other people talk about it in a very positive light, so I'm wary of putting people off, but yeah, maybe just approach with caution and consider how long they are. Yeah, I was glad I just bought it on ebook. So that's it, that's the Canterbury Tales tag. I actually have to look and see who hasn't done this tag yet, as I know a good few people have, so I'll leave one or two people tagged down below. And yeah, thanks for listening, thanks for watching. I'll see you next Thursday for my next video.